the final video of our series, we will add some interaction and behavior to our component. And the usual way to do this, so what we want to do is click on the header, which is here. If we click on this element, we want to make it open. And then if we click again, we want to close it. So we want some interaction. Usually we select and then we come here on click and we make a click on this placeholder, container, wherever. So, and if we want another thing, we add another event. And if we want to, we can create multiple events on multiple containers, and everything would be scattered in different places, in different containers. So if you want to maintain it, we need to open ServiceStudio, come to the block, alter, publish, then refresh, and all that stuff. So usually I don't do like this. I centralize everything in one JavaScript file, an external JavaScript file that can be kept on a repository with GitHub or GitLab or wherever. And then you can have, again, multiple developers working on the same repository, working on different components. And the code is shared and maintained. You can have branching and all that stuff. And the JavaScript is all centralized in an external. So let's do the same here. So to add the external JavaScript file, well, we have this required scripts, and then we will say that that script should come with a component. You can add the script on the layout, you can add the script on each component, so it's like CSS. So for example, CSS, we could put the CSS here, or we can put the CSS here on the theme, and it's shared across all screens, all modules that have that CSS. But we can also put the CSS here directly on the block. The difference is that if you put here, so if you have 10 blocks, then you have 10 requests of CSS files. So they are independent, it has that advantage, but at the same time you have 10 CSS files being requested. If you add everything here, you only have one request. So, and for the JavaScript is pretty much the same. So we can have a different JavaScript file for each component, or you can have one JavaScript file and then put it on the layout, for example, and everything is together. It's just one request. So, but that's in terms of architecture. So it's up to you. It's up to the project. Okay, so let's create a script file. I will call it master class again. And I will say that this component uses the master class. So this way, I'm going to put here some code, some JavaScript code. Just put console log, hello world from ServiceStudio. Yeah, something like this. So what this does is when I use this block on any screen, it will put the HTML of the block, and it will also add a JavaScript file, because I'm saying here require this script, so it will add this script. Okay, so let's publish. So hello world from ServiceStudio. What this did was, let me just put this a bit bigger. So now we have some JavaScript file over here. It should be, I don't know which one, network, JavaScript. It's easier this way. Okay, here it is. Open a new tab. So here is the console log. This is the JavaScript file. So in any screen that is using that block, it will add this masterclass, JS. How does it calculate the name? So masterclass is the name of the module and then the name of the file itself. So masterclass.masterclass. Okay. So, but again, I don't work directly in ServiceStudio like with the CSS. So I'm going to put the JavaScript on an external file using an editor, and then when everything is done, I will copy paste the code into it. And to do that, I will use an editor, an external editor, like with the style. Okay, so I'll create a JavaScript file. Usually in some projects, if it's a big project, I use TypeScript. So I set up everything, you write TypeScript, and then it compiles into JavaScript, pretty much like Sass that generates CSS, TypeScript generates JavaScript, but that's not the point of this video, so I will just play a bit with this. So this is the JavaScript. I'll just to test something here. Hello from my local host. Okay, so just to see the difference, I'm going to start the server. I will also serve the CSS as well. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the browser. I will activate both the JavaScript and the CSS. I'll just refresh. Hello from my local host. So now I am running JavaScript into a OutSystems application, running ServiceStudio, and I'm running the JavaScript from my local host. So whatever I write here from my local host in real time, save. For the JavaScript, you actually need to refresh. For CSS, you just save, it updates automatically. But with JavaScript, you need to reload because JavaScript is loaded on the start of the page. So it's not like CSS, it's not in real time. So I need to refresh in real time. So this way I can write JavaScript, come here, refresh, and all the interaction is automatically updated. Again, when I finish everything, I'll select all, copy, paste, and then I will put it here. And then the module is done and everything goes to the other environments. But on dev, this is how I work. So let's start to play a bit with this. So let's start writing some code. And to facilitate and speed up things, I already have the code here. I'll just copy paste. So what I'm doing here is creating a class which has a constructor and it has a console log when the class is initialized. So when I create an instance of the class, I can have multiple instances, meaning I can have multiple instances of the same block on the same screen and they are all independent. So when I do this, what this does is I'm going to refresh here to load that JavaScript. And now in my global, in my window object, I can, if you see here, new, my component, I'm being created. So now I have this available in my window object, in my browser. So next step is to call this from inside ServiceStudio. And let's do that. So to call, I need to create here the handlers for the onReady, initialize, the things that you already know, parameters change, etc. So I will, on this one, event onReady. Take this out, onReady. I will put a JavaScript node here. I will call it, okay, so I'll just put here new my component. So something like this is enough, but I'm going to do one thing more. So I want to keep an instance of that JavaScript object that it's being generated with the creation of the instance. So I will add here a variable of type object. I will call it instance. Not very original in my namings. So instance of type object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an output parameter here of type object. And I'm going to say that that output parameter is an instance of this class. Okay, and where is the assign? Here it is. And I'm going to say here that this variable here is the output of that JavaScript. So this is the new, I'm going to call it new. I'm going to align, I want this beautiful align. Okay, so this is generating an instance of the class, and it's keeping, for future reference, it's keeping it on an object over here. So I'll just publish and let's refresh. Hello from my localhost, and 2 times I'm being created. Let's differentiate a bit those 2 instances. And to do that, I need to use the runtime ID of this container. This is where I usually use as a gatekeeper for all the component. I'm going to add here my component. This way I can have a runtime ID of this container, and I'm going to use it here. So I have here the new. I will create it's not there, it's here. So runtime ID, something like this. It's text. This will be the runtime ID of the container, my component. So now I have this ID because it has a name. Now I can use it here, and one thing I can do, runtime ID, and then pass it on like this. So this way, I am creating an instance and I can add parameters and then do stuff with them. This is pretty cool. Okay, let's publish. And now what we can do is, so I get an object here. So I get like config parameters, let's call it that. And in here, this config, it's this part. So config.runtime ID will give me this. Okay, I'm being created config.runtime ID. I'm saving and refresh. I'm being created B1, my component. I'm being created B2, my component. What is this? It's the runtime ID that the platform generated. Where is it? Here. B1, my component. And this one is B2, my component. So these IDs are generated in runtime. They are not hard-coded, but we can obtain them after the DOM is generated. So you can obtain them on the onReady. This would not work on the initialize, because when the initialize happens, this is not generated yet. So, but this way, well, you're starting to get the point where we are going from here. Okay, so let's go back to here. So now let's add some interaction, some complex stuff in our JavaScript. Okay, so I'll just copy paste some code. What do we have? So I created 3 properties. The runtime ID is obtained from the object initializing in ServiceStudio when we do the new. The widgetL is the wrapper of our component, document get element by ID with the generated runtime ID. And then the header element is using query selector is my component header. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'll just call it potatoes. You'll understand why later. An instance, a reference to this instance. I'm going to save. I'll refresh. And now this is the component. I have this ID here. So ID, and now dot potatoes. What I have here is the instance of that class and everything available in the browser, so I can do pretty much whatever I want. So I have the runtime ID, the widget L, the header L. Of course, potatoes doesn't make sense. If we want something like this, we could call it instance, or even, this is common practice, so it's a private property, so underscore instance. This makes more sense. Again, this is just to demonstrate the possibilities. And the holder, the keeper of everything, is the widget L. The widget L, which is the element, the DOM element generated in ServiceStudio. I'm going to use B2 now. Oh, it's not potatoes. I called it instance. And now I have the second one. So this is the header. This is the ID. And this is the widget as a whole. Cool stuff. Let's continue. Let's try to create some events, some clicks, interactions. Let's go back to our browser. Okay, so let's play a bit. So header L, add event listener. So we'll have some click. I'll receive an event here. I'll just console log this event. Okay, add event listener on the header. I'll refresh. Pointer event on this one as well. Pointer event. What this does, click. So we have, and the click comes from master class JavaScript. You see? Okay, it's working. So it's receiving. So one of the things I'm going to do here is when I click, it will open. When I click again, it will close. But I need to get from inside ServiceStudio, the current state of this is open, because it may start open, it may start closed. So let me get here the is open, which is the current state, the initial state of the card is open. I get the parameter here, I get here. Let me publish, and while it publishes, so it means that I'm getting here the runtime ID and the is open. I want to store the is open, and I will say here that this config is open. Let me save some lines here as well. Okay. And what I'm going to do is toggle the is open state. So let me see this dot is open equals the negative of this is open. And again, let me this widget L data set is open equals this is open. Let's see if this works. It does. Great. So what I'm doing here is open, it's false. When I click, it's true. And then I click again, it's false. Magic. So what I'm doing is keeping the state here on this property, and then I am updating the DOM. So one thing, I am not updating this value here, the internal value of the component. It's not updated, it's not changed. But that's another subject. Of course, we can do that. I'm just trying to explain the concept of how things work at the moment. So I'm just updating here the DOM. And to update the DOM, its data set is open. Notice everything is in small, it's in lowercase. And why is that? Because data attributes are always in lowercase. You cannot have that attribute in uppercase. If you have multiple hyphens, it converts to camel case. But, well, you can Google about that, how it works. Okay, cool stuff. We need to elaborate a lot more, but I guess you get the point. One of the things that I'm going to do next, so this is an anonymous function. What I'm doing here, this is an anonymous function. And whenever we add an event, which I'm doing here, the click, whenever I add an event, I'm polluting, well, the component, I'm altering the DOM. When this page leaves, when the component leaves the screen, I need to remove the event listener. So we will use the onThis for that. And for me to remove a handler on an event, I cannot do this with an anonymous function. So for me to be able to remove an event listener, I need to create a method for this. Let's do that. And this will be a tricky part, so pay attention. I want to create a method, I'll call it click. I will put what? Oh, caps lock. This click. So what I want to do is add this handler, this click here, when I press the header element. This will almost work. Let's see. I'll refresh. I'm going to click. Oh, sorry. Of course. EVT. Refresh. Pointer event. So we do get the pointer event, which is this console log. But then I get an error in this part. Cannot read properties of undefined. Let me explain why. So I'm going to console log this method here. I'm going to press. So this is the HTML, it's the DOM. Of course, the DOM does not understand these properties. Of course, we could use this trick, but it doesn't make sense. What I'm going to do is I need to change the context of this handler. I need to say the context where this method will run where this handler will be run, it's the instance itself and not the DOM. And for that, I'm going to use something very common in JavaScript, which is the bind. Let's go. I'll call it binded click, and binded click will be this click dot bind, and I will bind the context to the instance itself. And here, instead of click, it will be binded click. And binded click is changing the instance. It's binding the context to the instance. I'll save. I'll run. I'll refresh. I'm going to click. Notice that now it works, because the context is the instance itself and not the DOM. So whenever we want to access the internal properties of the instance, we must use something like this, the bind. This is very common in JavaScript in most frameworks. And now we can actually use the remove event listener. And to do that, I will create here the on this try. I'll take this out. I will receive instance, which is of type object instance destroy. This will be this instance over here. I will call it destroy. I'll make this on. Okay. So we have the on ready, we have the on destroy, and while this publishes, let's go here. So let me save some space here. Okay. This is the destroy I'm referring, and when the destroy occurs, instead of add, remove event listener. So for me to be able to remove, it cannot be an anonymous function, it must be a named function, which in this case it is, the add and the remove. So the refresh has ended. Oh, for me to simulate the destroy, I need to create another screen, of course, and then navigate something. I'll create a copy. So screen 2, okay, and then from screen 1, I'm going to create a link. Screen 2, and here I have a link to screen 2, and then publish again. I'll refresh. Oh, wait a minute. Destroying this runtime ID for us to check if it's actually working or not. I'm going to navigate, check the console, destroying B1 my component, B2 my component. Now I'm on screen 2 and it ran the destroy of the other. And that's it. Let's continue. And let's go back. I'm going to add a link here as well. Where's the link? So this will go to screen 1. Screen 1. Okay. And one before publishing, so I'm just doing display block, display none. Let me add some content and make some differences here on the screens. So on screen 2, this will be full, this will be small, and yeah, and on this one I'm going to add more content here. So fill, and margin bottom M. Okay, so let me publish. I'll refresh. So now we have different content. So in here I have more content. What I'm doing is just display. But imagine I don't want a rough interaction. So I want like a slow transition, like movement. And one of the things that usually happens is if I have different sizes of content, the animation might be too fast or too slow, depending on the content. With JavaScript, you can calculate the height and then make the animation accordingly. So let's do that. Okay, so let me fetch some code. I'll just copy paste it here. Let's go through a bit. So what have I done here different? So I added body element and the scroll height. I'll just sort these lines. So the scroll height is the height of the body. The body is obtained with this query selector. And then I set the CSS variable with the value that we obtained here. And then we have a transition, because I can update CSS with JavaScript, of course. And well, this is just a formula. If we have a higher height, so it will take longer, the animation. And let me update the CSS as well. Okay, so with this JavaScript, let me refresh just to make sure that we are getting the latest version. What do we have? So if you see, scroll height is being calculated in runtime. It's 104 pixels, and transition duration is 135 milliseconds. So this is not working yet because I haven't updated the CSS, but we get these values. And on this one, let me just interact with it. So it has a higher height and also a larger transition duration. Just generate some new content to see if it's a bit larger. No, it's pretty much the same. So it's random, but yeah, I'm going to. So we have different values. This is obtained with JavaScript. This is obtained with JavaScript as well. Let me just go here. Yeah. So much shorter duration because it's much shorter height as well. Okay. Now we need to use these values on the CSS. So let's go back to the CSS. What can we do here? Okay, so let me just copy paste this from the other one. Okay, and so I have here unset. I'm going to use the CSS variable that is obtained with JavaScript and added on the DOM. So the property that I'm changing is the max height. This is just the ease, just to facilitate, but this is the magic line. So the max height will be the scroll height, which is the height of the content. So let's see how this works. Okay, you can notice an animation, and now on this one, you see, it's smoother because it has larger content. So it has, well, you can update the formula if you want it faster or not. The thing is, the duration of the animation is not the same because they have different content. And that's it. So what we have here, so we updated the CSS and we have some JavaScript here as well. So we had, well, different things to do. We'll continue, but let's recap a bit what we've done so far. So we created a class. We have some properties. The constructor is the initialization of the instance. And then we have an event, which is the click. And then we have a method, which is the toggle, just swap things. It's a bit cleaner this way. And then the onDestroy is where we clean up all the event listeners. And we now have a component with full interaction. And inside ServiceStudio, we just have these two handlers, the onDestroy and the onReady. And the thing is, the advantage here is we can change the behavior of our component, and we just need to update the JavaScript. So we don't need to come here and alter the block. So we just need to update the JavaScript that will be here. And the code, because it's outside of ServiceStudio, can be on a repository and can be branched. We can have versions. We can have a lot of stuff. And if you are a front-end developer, you can use TypeScript. This code will be much easier with types. So I guess you are starting to see the point of how to manage large code bases using this approach. What you are going to do next is how to update the value of the internal variables of the block. So how can we, from the browser, interact here and change the internal value of the block? Let's see. Okay, so when I'm talking about internal value, I'm talking about this input parameter. I'll do one thing here. So is open. I will publish. So what this does is to make it visible, the internal variable is open and its value. So let's just refresh here. Okay, is open false, is open true. And if I interact, nothing changes, of course, because I'm just manipulating the DOM. But the value, it's still false. It doesn't change. So let's handle this. And to update the value, I need an internal handler on this block. So add client action, I'll call it set is open. Well, not very original. This will receive the value itself. And what this does is set the is open with the received argument. Oh yeah, this value needs to be a boolean. Okay, is open value. Yeah. Okay, so this way I have a client action, an internal client action from ServiceStudio that updates this is open. Okay, so but I want to access this client action from my code. one of the ways to do it is to pass it as a reference to JavaScript and then access it. Okay, let's do that. I create something called actions here, and I will pass on this handler as a reference. So I'm passing as a reference. Okay, publish. Let's go back. So I need to update this code as well. I need to receive that actions that comes from this config. I'll create a property here. Actions equals config dot actions, okay, which comes from here. And so now I have access to those handlers. Let's go back just to confirm one thing. Actions dot set is open. This is the reference I'm keeping. So what I want to do is call that from here. So this actions dot set is open, which is the name that we have on the other side, and I will pass on this is open. So true or false. Save. Again, refresh here because it's JavaScript. Now notice those variables. True, false. You see? I am updating the internal variable inside the React, which is the engine of OutSystems. Okay, so one thing that I don't need to do now is this. So I don't need to manually update the DOM because this is done automatically by the platform. Let's confirm. Yeah. So when I update the variable, the data attribute is updated as well. So now this value here is being updated inside ServiceStudio by the React platform. Oh, it's not that one. Yeah. Okay. Next steps. And let's go back here. So one thing that usually happens as well is controlling a component from outside of the interaction. So for example, I have a variable and I update something in my application and this triggers this card. So let's try to do that as well. So screen one, I will create a variable here, is open. It's a Boolean, and I will put a switch here for the is open. Okay, and so and this will control if the card is open or not. So I'm controlling from outside of the card itself. It's not interaction. So, and I have here is open. Okay, now I'm going to this and I'm saying that this is open, and this also it is open. And just to confirm, oh, one of the things, I'll remove this from here. I'll just make one change here, an expression here that will access, so something like this. Screen level is open. Okay, publish, and I'll refresh. Okay, so I have screen level is open, it's false. No, it's true. It's false, it's true. So you can see I am controlling the state of the component from outside. So this is also pretty common as well. Let's see what more we can do. Oh, one thing very important. So when I update this, I am not communicating to the JavaScript, to the instance, that something has changed. So I will do this now. Oh, here. So parameters changed. Okay, and from here I will pass on. Oh, I can do this from here. So passing on the instance parameters changed. I will create this on JavaScript. What am I passing on? I'm passing on because it's the only thing I am expecting to change. I will pass on the is open. I'll call this parameters change. So from here, is open. Oh, yeah. So this is the only parameter I'm willing to change. Okay, I'll put this align. Yeah, it's done. And here. Oh no, yeah. Okay. Parameters change, publish. And here I should parameters changed. So this will receive something like, let's call it payload. Yeah. And the payload only has one property, which is the is open. So what I'm doing here is, so this is open, the internal is payload is open. So what this does is this propagates the update of the variable that comes from ServiceStudio and propagates inside of the instance. So in terms of visually, nothing changes, but it's just to keep in sync the state of the property in ServiceStudio, in OutSystems, and the state of the same variable, the same property inside my instance. Okay, I'll refresh here. Oh, one thing. So console.log and payload. Okay, just for us to test what's happening here. So I will, okay, yeah, because that doesn't trigger parameters change because it's internal, it's not coming from outside, but this one does because I'm updating the variable from outside. So this triggers a parameters change. So is open true, true. Why do I have two? Because it's this one and this one. If I close, is open false, false. So this is the parameters changed. So this way I have both things in sync. The internal ServiceStudio and the external, which is my JavaScript class instance. So one final thing is, how do I communicate from inside the block to the screen, to outside, which in OutSystems is an event, a client-side event emitted by the component. Let's do that. Okay, so I'll create an event here. Event, so when I click toggle, yeah, I'll just call it toggle. So it's no, it's not mandatory. Toggle. So I cannot access the event directly, but I will create a client action on toggle. And what this does is trigger the event. Okay, so toggle. I need to pass on this again by reference to my class. So let's come here. Toggle. I need to copy this. Actions on toggle. So now I will pass on two client actions as a reference. So if I invoke this on toggle, this will trigger this event. Oh, sorry, here. This will trigger this event. I can pass on parameters as well. Okay, we can do it. Yeah, I'll do that. Runtime ID. For example, if I want to be aware of this, can be the runtime ID. Okay, so I will pass on the runtime ID toggle, and that's it. Let's publish. And now I need to update my JavaScript here as well. So when I toggle, which is when I click here, I can emit the event. Well, I should emit the event. So this actions toggle, and I want to pass on. Oh no, I don't need to pass here because I'm doing that from inside. But I could as well pass here. So let's save. Because this one doesn't have input parameters, so I don't need to pass on here. This is done here. Okay. So on toggle, just confirm this action. It's not toggle, it's on toggle. Okay. And from here, I want to do one thing, which is to listen to that event. So here, handler, I'll create a handler here. I'll put some notification. Toggled the runtime ID. Okay, something like this. Let's publish and let's refresh. Okay, you see? I'm communicating when I interact here. I'm communicating that something has updated. And let's make here an update. So toggle, I need to toggle as well when the parameters change from outside. This is done. So on the screens, my component toggle, this one as well, yeah. My component toggle, and the runtime ID that I get from the event. Okay, this is it. Let's publish and let's refresh here. Okay, so if I interact, I emit the event. If I interact with this one, I also emit the event. So I'm emitting the event to the screen, meaning other components that might exist. And if I do this, I'm also, oh yeah, because I get two, but the feedback message from OutSystems, if I launch a feedback message, it eliminates the previous one. So I get for this, and then I only see this one because it happens afterwards. So this way we conclude the JavaScript implementation in OutSystems. There are a lot of things that we could talk about, but well, this video is long enough. So we created a component, we added JavaScript, we had ways for the component to receive input parameters and to emit events and interact both inbound and outbound. We saw how to create JavaScript outside of the platform. Then I can just select all, copy paste, and then put this JavaScript here and then publish and follow the regular life of the module. So I hope you enjoyed it. Write in the comments, contact me if you want, well, whatever you want in terms of front end. Let's keep in touch and subscribe to the channel, of course. Bye bye.